Good evening. I'm David Saginaw, the president of the Jewish Federation of Greater MetroWest, New Jersey, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to tonight's program, The Last Jewish Gangster. There are close to 600 people who have registered tonight to hear from Newark's native son, Myron Sugerman. I'd like to make a shout out to the Ner Tamid Society committee that brought us this intriguing dialogue. Like many of you, my wife Paula and I are members of the Ner Tamid Society, proudly supporting the UJA annual campaign for well over 25 years. 160 members of the Ner Tamid Society are with us tonight, as well as members of the Jewish Historical Society of Greater MetroWest. Your support demonstrates your commitment to ensuring the continuity of our wonderful community, and for that, I thank you. And of course, a special thank you to all on this call who have made your gift to the 2023 UJA annual campaign. Because of you, Federation can continue to respond to the needs of the community with strength and speed. We can safeguard and secure our communities. We can provide life-saving services to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. We can support those in need in our community. We can lead the fight against hate and anti-Semitism. And we can ensure that Greater MetroWest remains a place where we can all live a meaningful Jewish life for generations to come. Your one UJA gift enables all of this and more to take place every day, every year. Thank you. Speaking of our Greater MetroWest community, we will soon be celebrating its past, its present, and its future when we launch our centennial in July. And we want all of you to come to the party. You can still join the close to 500 of us on the centennial mission to Israel from July 2nd to 10th. Registration is still open, but I've been told that there are very few spaces left. So if you are interested, just email me at dsaginaw@gmail.com and I will point you in the right direction. One of the ways we're celebrating our Federation centennial is by launching our historical centennial campaign, the largest campaign in our history with a goal of $250 million. Yes, $250 million. This campaign is already enhancing our Greater MetroWest community today and helping to secure it for its next century and beyond. For those who have already become centennial donors, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those who have not, we hope you will consider joining in this historic effort. There are many ways to give to the centennial campaign, but the most important way is to make a gift or leave a legacy gift through an endowment supporting the future of the UJA annual campaign. We know many of you on this Zoom are longtime UJA supporters, and this is the moment to create a legacy to support UJA each year forever in your name. And I want to emphasize that these legacy gifts can be made at all different levels. You can contact the Federation or Jewish Community Foundation professional to discuss the various ways to leave a legacy for the future of our amazing Greater MetroWest community. And as before, to make it easy, just email me at dsaginaw@gmail.com and I will connect you with the proper profession. Speaking of legacy, I'm so proud of the important work of Federation's newest department, the Jewish Historical Society, which serves an invaluable role as the archival repository of our Jewish community, collecting, preserving, maintaining, and making available to the public artifacts of our rich history. A big part of our communal history, of course, is the city of Newark, home to Weequahic High School, the Beth, and many synagogues and Jewish cemeteries, some dating back to the late 1880s. Since 2018, the Federation and the Jewish Community Foundation has supported the restoration of the Jewish cemeteries in Newark. Today, with generous funds from the Paula and Jerry Gottesman Family Supporting Foundation, Federation is funding the Newark Initiative Startup, which continues to build ties every day between our Greater MetroWest community and the people of Newark. Now, without further ado, I'm honored to introduce Newark's native son, author, and the last Jewish gangster, Myron Sugerman. Facilitating the dialogue tonight is Rebecca Gold, Ner Tamid committee member, legacy and annual UJA donor, and volunteer extraordinaire. Now, take it away, Rebecca and Myron.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. So I'm here with Myron Sugerman. This is really an honor. My father was born at the Beth, and he lived in Newark and went to Weequahic High School, and he was a boxer, which we'll get to later. So this is particularly meaningful for me, and I've become dear friends with Myron and his wife Clara. So I'm thrilled to be here. We're going to show you some pictures. Myron is going to speak to these pictures. We'll have time for questions, so please put them in the chat. And let's go.
We'll have time if you stop talking. Okay, let's get started. What do you want to do? You want to show
Maybe
pictures?
we can show pictures.
Okay, so that's a picture of my father. My father was born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1900. He was born, and we find out that he was born in this gal's uncle's store, which was Krupp's store, but probably bought that
Toy
store
yeah.
years later. It was on Springfield Avenue, corner of Belmont. My father was part of and this is very important, he was part of that world of Longy, Abner Longy's Willman, Doc Stature, Joe Doc Stature, and subsequent members of that gang, but really the bosses of Newark. And you can't tell the story of Newark, New Jersey without telling the story of Abner Longy's Willman and Joe Doc Stature. Longy, of course, the story of he was known as the Al Capone of New Jersey, because the alcohol that came into the state of New Jersey came in under his rule, and it got distributed to the rest of the country. He was a major supplier of alcohol during Prohibition. Doc Stature was his equal partner. Joe Doc Stature eventually, in the case of Abner Longy's Willman, he died in February 1959. And of course, the story was, and always will be, did he die of his own hand by suicide or by the hands of others? In the case of Doc Stature, he accepted permanent exile from the United States. He had made a deal with Robert Kennedy in 1960, 62, 63, 64, and he accepted exile, and he was born in Ukraine, but he of course, that was under communist rule. He lived his life out in Israel. Longy and Doc, my father, together with Abe Green. Abe Green was my father's partner. Abe Green and my father became partners after they both got locked up for stolen alcohol in 1935. And then they started the jukebox business. I think you have another picture.
Yeah,
there.
let's move on to the next
Okay,
picture.
okay, that's the original picture of the jukebox and gaming business on Hunterdon and Clinton Avenue, 1938. That was called Royal Sales. Then they eventually moved to Runyon Street, became known as Runyon Sales Company. Doc was the original partners with my father and with Abe Green. And then Doc in 1945, he left to go to the West Coast, and he opened up what was known as the Moulin Rouge nightclub in Los Angeles. And the man that replaced him was, I think you have a picture of him anyways. The man that replaced him was Jerry Katina.
We do have him, but we'll get to
Okay, we'll get to that picture. So we have to go back a little bit in the history, because people want to know, how did the gangs form? The gangs formed by kids, tough kids that they formed gangs to protect their territory. First of all, the Third Ward, Prince Street, belonged to the Jews. So if you're a gangster or a gangster wannabe getting started, you have to protect your neighborhood. It was a question of protecting the neighborhood from the invasion of kids from other neighborhoods, from other ethnicities. In the case of Longy, the name Longy comes as a result of when the Schutzim, when the goyim from the other neighborhoods would come in to beat up on Jews. So the old timers would scream in Yiddish, "Rift for the Langer," "Rift for the Langer," meaning call the tall one. Langer meaning tall. From the name Langer comes the name Longy. And by the way, he became super rich, super wealthy, super successful, and extremely powerful in politics. He had financed movies in Hollywood. He had a love affair with Jean Harlow. He's the one that made her famous.
Wow.
And he was the boss. In fact, he was so powerful, he was even boss over the Italians. Now,
Wow.
You cannot tell the story of Newark, of New Jersey underworld without, and you can't tell the Jewish story without telling the Italian story.
Wait, let's hold that thought. Let's go to the next picture just to make
Okay.
sure we don't, okay.
Okay, so, okay, very good. So here's a picture of Nat Arno, Louis Hopper, Max Fisher,
Mo Fisher.
and it's another picture of Max Fisher. We had a lot of Jewish prize fighters. The one that fought for the championship of the world was Ali Stoltz. He's not in here, but Nat Arno was the one that formed the Minutemen. The Minutemen was an organization that started in the 30s at the time that you had the rise of anti-Semitism, the Nazi party. Fritz Kuhn was the one that declared himself as the Adolf Hitler of the United States of America.
Okay.
And Newark, New Jersey was the first battleground between the Jews and the Germans. There was still a large German community from going all the way back in time because Newark, New Jersey had the best water beer. There were 19 breweries in its heyday.
Wow.
Subsequent to the defeat of the Kaiser Wilhelm and the Austrian Hungarian Empire, you had a large immigration again of Germans that came to Newark, New Jersey in the post the 1920s. Fritz Kuhn appealed to the German immigrants as well as to the anti-Semites from all the different ethnicities, and he formed what was known as the American Nazi Party.
Mm-hmm.
They would rally, and after they would have their rallies, they'd go into the Clinton Hill section, into the South, into the Weequahic section, and they would start to beat up on Jews.
Were these big rallies, huge rallies, or?
So, very good question. You could go into YouTube, go into Google. 1939, Madison Square Garden, 25,000 Nazis in Madison Square Garden. They had a gigantic
American
Nazi Party. It was the end, and Fritz Kuhn, that was the end because the war started in 1939. Subsequent to the 1941. So up to that particular point, it was a strong movement in the United States until, of course, Pearl Harbor, and 4 days subsequent to that, the Axis declared war on the United States, which had changed everything. But the Minutemen, Nat Arno, the picture here, he went to Longy, and he said to Longy, I want to form an organization. I'm going to call it the Minutemen in honor of the Minutemen of the Revolutionary War.
Go to the next picture. There we go.
Okay, there's Nat Arno in the middle. That's Skinny Markowitz. The other guys, I remember the faces, but I don't remember the names. But they were all friends of my dad. My father was a major supporter of the Minutemen. He and his brother, Uncle Nat. In the case of Nat Arno, he went to Longy and got a blessing from Longy because Longy controlled everything in terms of politics. The mayor of the city of Newark was handpicked by Longy's woman. Mayor's name was Meyer Ellenstein. He was a dentist and a prize fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And he became the mayor, and Longy controlled through all the connections at City Hall. So when the Nazis were meeting at the beer gardens, our guys went in and beat the out of them, all right? Because you told me no profanity, so I can't.
He believed himself.
Okay, so they went in and beat the hell out of him. And this not only went on in Newark, New Jersey, But Meyer Lansky did the same thing. And I said earlier this, and we were having a discussion, that the Jewish gangster was a Jewish patriot. In the particular case of Meyer Lansky, Charlie Lucky Luciano, when he heard that they're going to go beat up the Nazis up in Yorkville on First Avenue and 86th Street, he said to Meyer Lansky, "I'll give you all of my guys." And Meyer Lansky says, "No, thank you very much, Lucky, but Charlie, but this is a Jewish problem. It's going to be resolved by Jewish fists." There was a sense of all these guys. There was a sense of patriotism, insofar as Jewish pride was concerned, and they did an effective job of beating the hell out of them. I was going to bring a picture tonight of Putty Hinkes. He was one of the guys, one of the many that participated.
Is there something in particular you want to tell us about Putty? Right.
The hate, the vengeance, the revenge of a Jew had no limits insofar as resolving, as far as expressing itself. One night at Laurel Gardens, somebody was sitting behind him and said, "Kill that Jew." All right, kill that Jew, kill that. But he was smoking a cigar, turned around, stuck a cigar right in the guy's eye.
Oh,
All right.
all right.
Get the picture?
Got it.
Okay.
Next picture.
Next picture. So that's Doc Stature. That was when he was in Las Vegas. From Los Angeles, he was involved, not with the Flamingo, but he was involved with the Sands Hotel and a bunch of other hotels. He might have been one of the most powerful men of his time. And he was genius, absolute genius. In a mind that was a steel. I knew him since I'm a baby. That was my father's original partner in the jukebox and the gaming business. My father and Doc grew up together. They were inseparable from going forward. And he ended up making a deal with Robert Kennedy. His lawyer was Edward Bennett Williams, but he made a deal with Robert Kennedy sitting on a park bench in Washington, D.C. to accept exile from the United States. He went to Israel and he lived at the Sheraton Hotel. And that's when I met Meyer Lansky. Next picture.
Next picture.
Next picture.
Here we go.
So there's Longy, and the picture on the right, that's a picture of Meyer Lansky. So I met Meyer Lansky in 1970s, in September 7, 1970, 2 months after Meyer Lansky left the United States in order to make Aliyah Sikh, to immigrate into Israel, because they had gotten word that there was going to be an indictment by the federal government for an income tax evasion case. And he ran before he could be indicted, before the indictment could be handed to him. I was told one day, Doc Stetch, every time I used to go to Israel, I spent all my time with Doc. Doc used to stay at the Sheraton Hotel. So I used to stay with Doc, and I was his sidekick because I was Shuggy's son, and I was also scheduled the next month. I went to Africa for them, for Meyer Lansky's crew, his organization, to run slot machines. They made a deal with a couple of gangsters from Beirut, Lebanon, a couple of Arab gangsters, and I was sent there to be the manager of this enterprise. And I met with Meyer Lansky. He requested, he told Doc, he says, "I would like to meet the kid." We met for Saturday on a Shabbat lunch. And what they were concerned with, the two of them, of course, it was about Jerry Katina. So in order to understand you can move the, there's a picture of Jerry Katina. Jerry Katina was, from very, very early on, he was very close with Longy. They were inseparable. All right. As a matter of fact, Public Service Tobacco Company, 1932, the cigarette machine operation of Longy's Wilman, his name, Jerry Katina's name, is on the minutes. Wow. I have those minutes, but Doc's name, Longy's name, Doc, yes, Jerry, yes, but Longy was not there.
So Longy mentored Jerry.
You could say it was a very interesting relationship. Jerry Katina was of course, he was Italian, and he was sort of like the bridge of communication between the Jews and the Italians, although the boss of the Italians, besides Jerry Cattina, was Richie the Boot Boiardo, the boot meaning bootlegger and so forth. Longy Zwillman and the boot were bitter enemies. And an attempt was made by the Jews, by Longy, to put a hit on Richie the Boot Boiardo. He survived the hit. The legend is that, or the story is that Al Capone either came or sent his brother to Newark, New Jersey at the request of Doc Statcher to make shulam, to make peace between the Jews and the Italians. The boot owned a restaurant called the Victoria Castle, all right? It was a very famous place, and they had a 3-day celebration, 3 days, 3 nights. It was in the newspaper, armistice between the Jews and the Italians okay? Jerry Cattina ultimately emerged as the boss of the Italians.
Wow.
He became the Genovese crime family boss. He was the one that I was closest with because he showed up in our lives, 1945. He bought out the shares of Doc Statcher in Runyon Sales Company.
That's your father's business.
It was my father's part. He was my father's partner, and I grew up with him. And he was the most competent executive I've ever met in my entire life. The man could have been the president of the United States of America. Many years later, 1991, I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and at a party for somebody's 70th, his wife's 70th birthday. Mr. Cattina came in and he said, "He'll sit with me tonight." He told me in the course of the evening that he was just another executive of another corporation. All right. And that he was. Ultimately, he emerges after the death of Abner Longy Zwillman. He emerges as the boss of the Jews. Whatever remaining Jews, whoever the remaining Jews were, they answered to him.
Did they ever come to a conclusion as to whether Longy Zwillman was murdered or committed suicide?
So my father was partners with Mr. Cattina, all right? And the rumor was always, or the suggestion was, that Mr. Cattina ordered the hit on Mr. Zwillman. And it'll be a myth, a legend to be discussed for years to come. Of course, my father being partners with Mr. Cattina, his position was that Mr. Zwillman committed suicide. All right. My father was no dummy. Next picture.
There we go.
There's a picture. Okay, so my father went into the jukebox business, and this is a picture going back to 1951. That's Perry Como. There's Abe Green. That was my father's original partner, original partner. 1935, they got locked up together for stolen alcohol. All right. And my father was, his picture was in the paper as the ringleader of that particular operation.
How long was he in jail?
So Longy had the connection. So my father was in for 2 weeks, but he took a terrible beating because it was federal alcohol that was intercepted on a shipment coming in from Europe. People were still making booze, still making hooch, even after the prohibition ended. So my father, he took but he never opened up. He never, and for that, of course, that was
got a lot of respect. For that.
That's it. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
All right.
Next
picture. So there's a picture of my father. That year is 1953. That's Tony Bennett. He was a kid at the time. So they used to come, all the stars used to come down and take pictures with the jukeboxes, new jukeboxes and so forth, because the jukebox was an instrument used to promote the singers, right? And so we had pictures with a lot of the different stars that used to come to his premises on 10th Avenue and 43rd Street.
Did your dad love the sort of interacting with the stars?
Yeah, of course he did. He loved it, ate it up.
Sure. Next.
But he was a businessman. He was a charming guy.
Yeah.
Nice, terrific, different charm, different style than myself. Different style. He was from the old school, and but Charm can come in different ways.
Okay.
That's a picture of me with Simon
Now,
Wiesenthal.
this is a very important picture. This is a
Okay,
great
so,
story.
if you go back to the original picture, the iconic one with the 1943, the picture in Warsaw with the little fella coming out with short pants. So again, what was given to me was the pride of being a Jew.
Mhm.
That was the essence of everything as far as our lives were concerned. So I always said to myself that only by circumstances or accident of geography, that little kid could have been born here in the United States, and I could have been that kid with the hands up with a Nazi guard pointing a rifle at him. And in 1965, I was in Vienna the first time doing business. And I had a customer, his name was Joseph Remedy. He was a Hungarian Jew that escaped from Budapest in the 1956 uprising. And I said to him, I said, take me to see Simon Wiesenthal. He says, here's his address, you go. So I went and knocked on the door, introduced myself. And I said, who are you? I said, Myron Sugerman, I'm from New Jersey. Okay, well, out came Simon Wiesenthal, old European style suit. Sit down, you haven't, and ask me a zillion questions. What's your interest and so forth and so forth. And I told him I would like to help pursue Nazi war criminals. My wife's family came from Poland, migrated to Argentina. And of course, at that time, they had captured Eichmann in Buenos Aires, in the suburb of Buenos Aires on Garibaldi Street. And I said that I would like to do whatever I could. And from that point forward, he and I, he was my mentor in terms of the Holocaust and so forth. I really got involved in it. And one day he said to me, you speak languages, you go all over the world.
How many languages do you speak?
About 6. I can get by in six
Wow.
easy. At different levels. So he said to me, you go to Paraguay? I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'm going to give you a name. All right. Get into the Jewish community, find out what's the street talk about the sightings of Joseph Mengele. Right. So sure enough, I used to do business in Paraguay, and the guy's name was Louis Schumstein. I call him up and spoke to him in Yiddish. And he says, from Big Kimston, where you come from the United States. I'm a friend of deine Freund from Vienna. So I'm a friend of your friend from Vienna. He said, okay, good. He said, meet me. I'm giving you an address. I go meet him, a little bar. And I told him, I says, Wiesenthal sent me to inquire as to street talk as far as Mengele. He told me, look, for your own safety and security, this country is run by a dictator. It's been 37 years dictator. His name was Alfredo Stroessner. Alfredo Stroessner is the grandson of Germans. He protected the Nazis. You don't want to go around Asunción, Paraguay, asking all kinds of questions and so forth. Do yourself a favor. We're all immigrants. All of the Jews here are survivors from the Holocaust. And we'd appreciate it if you don't stick your nose into our business. We want to live here, die here without any problems. Okay, no, of course. Understood. And that was it. Went back to the hotel. That afternoon, I'm ready to go out that night. Phone rings. Who's downstairs? It's Schumstein, Mr. Schumstein. And he says, no. I really want to, okay. And he gives
So he
me,
wanted to help you.
he wanted to help
Right.
capture Mengele. There was a sighting. And the next month I'm on a flight, or a month or 2 months later on a flight going from Asunción to Buenos Aires. And sure enough, I'm sitting next to an elderly couple, and the elderly couple was speaking Yiddish. And I go, oh, you're Jewish boy, where you from the United States, and so forth. So who do you know in Asunción? Let's play a little game of Jewish geography. I said, well, I know a few people, but one in particular, Louis Schumstein. Were you here a couple of months ago? Yeah, I was here a couple of months ago. So the woman tells me, I'm going to tell you a story. She said, we're survivors. I'm a survivor of Auschwitz. And she says, one day we have a dry goods store in the center of Asunción, Paraguay. And sure enough, one morning I'm by myself, and who walks in? 3 men. The man in the middle, immediately she identifies and realizes that's Joseph Mengele. She freezes. She froze. When Mengele saw that her reaction, he understood that she identified him. They made a U-turn and took off. She tells me the story, of course, and the story was conveyed to Simon Wiesenthal, conveyed it to Mossad. But Mengele allegedly died off the shores of Pernambuco in the northeast of Brazil in a swimming something. So anyways, over the years, I had a fantastic relationship with Simon Wiesenthal. The letter next to it is a letter that he wrote to the judge on several occasions, all right, in which he said that I assisted him in pursuit of Nazi war criminals.
This is when you were on trial, or
Not
when you
on
were in
trial.
front of
This was
the judge to get arraigned.
Sentencing. For sentencing, we got a letter. In a well-known trial that I had in Washington, D.C. case, the prosecutor was a Jewish woman. I told you the story. She fell in
Yeah,
love.
but you got to tell them the story.
Oh, so the woman, she's, I can't repeat what I told you in private, but the woman, she took a liking to me, more than a liking. And she said, I'm going to get you in one way or the other. So I said, boy, this woman is a nut. She was the prosecutor in the case. And to make a long story short, my kid cousin was my lawyer. He says to me, you better get a hold of Simon Wiesenthal. He says, let him write a letter for you. So sure enough, I get a lot of Simon Wiesenthal writes this letter. All right. The woman goes to see the judge, very famous judge, Harold Green, the guy that breaks up the AT&T monopoly. And it was the one that was involved in the Iran-Contra. All right. And he was an escapee from Nazi Germany. He was a German Jew, and sure enough, she goes into gets the letter. She gets the copy of the letter. She goes and this letter is it's counterfeit. Go prove it. Sure enough, she calls Simon Wiesenthal. Finally finds him in Tel Aviv. He's visiting his daughter. Did you write a letter from Mr. Sugerman? Of course I don't. Aren't you calling me about some Nazi war criminals? What are you wasting my time for? She went back. She told the judge, I don't know if I was talking to Simon Wiesenthal. He said, get the hell out of my chambers. Get out of here. All right. You're a nutcase altogether. Anyways, it turned out that the day that I was for sentencing, some young lady comes out of the chambers. And she's smiling at me. And my kid cousin says, cuz, you're not that little girl over there. She's smiling. I said, she's very pretty. She's smiling. I said, a lot of pretty girls smile at me. Cuz, what's so unusual about that? But she's smiling. I've never seen her in my life. Turns out that this girl was the law clerk to Judge Green, whose brother was a gangster.
What a racket.
Who fed her sister. You go tell Judge Green, this Myron Sugerman, he's a terrific guy. You know what he does? He teaches us how to rig the slot machine so it never pays out on a jackpot. Next.
I think that might be, is that our last picture? I think it might be. Yes, it is. So we've had a wonderful time. We want to take some questions.
Okay, okay.
I do have a question of my own. What with the Minutemen, did the police ever intervene with them?
Of course not, because Longy had everything under control. Longy had the city hall, had the police department and everything. So nobody ever had any problems. And they, in the case of New York, it was Judge Nathan Perlman went to Meyer and said to him, we need you to do the same thing in New York, what Longy's doing in Newark, with one caveat: we can't have homicide. You can do whatever you want, but you can't. No homicide.
Okay.
Right?
I have a couple of questions that have come in. Somebody wants to know if you think that the FBI is listening to this interview.
I hope they are. All right.
Okay. That was a good one.
The FBI in its day was an organization to respect and fear.
Okay.
In its day.
in its
Next.
day. Got it. So talk a little bit more about your jail time. What was that like, and what, did you experience anti-Semitism in jail?
So in jail, what separates is if you were stand up in your case,
How long were you in jail?
19 months.
What were you in for?
I think jaywalking.
All right, what were you really in for?
They claimed organized crime and gambling,
Okay.
but I corrected the judge at sentencing. I said it wasn't organized. It was the most disorganized bunch of bimbos that you ever met in your entire life.
So you got 19 months.
I did 19 months, 2 months halfway house, 2 months home of confinement, 3 months probation.
When was this?
1995. And it ended in 2000.
Okay, so go back to the Jews, not Jews.
No, Jews. The question of Jews, that doesn't separate you in jail. There's one thing that separates, and that's the question. If you were stand up in your case, you were not a snitch, because the snitches are hated. All right. And if you weren't even allowed to say hello to a guy that was a rat in his case. All right.
Mm-hmm.
When I say you weren't allowed, guys would come up to you and say, what the hell did you say hello to that guy for? Do you know how many people he buried and so forth? It's but once you're in jail, once you're there, it's like anything on the face of this earth. You either make it into a positive experience, or you're gonna have a miserable life. So I got myself into shape. I would play paddleball every day. I read books. A bunch of intelligent people, a lot of bright.
So
very
it sounds
bright
like you had a little bit of a vacation.
It's a terrific vacation. All right, you don't have no beeper. Nobody's calling you. All right, nobody's hocking you. Go to sleep. Wake up. All right.
So I have a question about, we were talking about anti-Semitism.
I'll tell you one story. Cute story.
Okay.
All right. I used to put the filling on every morning. All right.
Okay.
Little black kid come along and said, "Hey, sugar daddy, how come you take your blood pressure every morning?"
That's a good story. And you had Shabbat.
Nobody
services.
bothers you. The
But
Muslims,
you had Shabbat services.
the Muslims have their service. You had a chapel. So they used to take the star off, take the cross off, put on the star for the guys that are coming in for Minyan. All right.
Okay, that's a good story.
It was nice. It was nice.
So I have a serious question though.
Sure.
How do you feel? I mean, we know how you feel about anti-Semitism there, but how do you feel about the new emerging anti-Semitism and everything that's going on today? How do you make sense of that?
Is it's inevitable. If you read your Pesach Haggadah, right?
Mhm.
What does it say in it? In each generation, they'll rise up to kill us.
Mhm.
It never fails. There's something about Judaism, Jewish people, Jewish everything, that just as we get a break, you catch a break. Like the war, World War II, put an end to the rising anti-Semitism in the 30s. 30s was brutal.
Mhm.
So we had a break for the war. After the war, of course, we always had some form of anti-Semitism. The rising anti-Semitism today could be a combination of many, many factors. All right. Could be the larger immigration of Muslims coming into the country. We never had something like this. Ilan Omar, you so forth and so forth. It's coming from different forms. You have black anti-Semitism, you have white nationalists, you have all different kinds of stuff. The problem is that it would be substantially mitigated if the Jews were unified.
Right.
All right. You're never going to see Minutemen.
Right.
If you want to go see Minutemen, you got to go to the cemetery. Talk to them.
So going back to the Minutemen, they sent arms to Israel. Did they have?
No, that wasn't the Minutemen.
That work? I know that there was a lot of
Okay.
patriotism
So-
for Israel.
Okay.
Through the
So the mob played a very effective role. All right. Not just the mob. I told you about a book called The Pledge by a fellow by the name of Campbell. And in that book, he talks about Rudolph Sonnenborn,
Mhm.
an industrialist from New York
Look at the camera so people
that
can
called
look at your phone.
that brought Jews from all over the United States together, and they was a gigantic movement to buy up weapons and arms. David Ben-Gurion came to the United States, had a friend down in Asbury Park, New Jersey, by the name of Zemo Resnick, that was a fellow soldier in the Jewish unit of the British Army in World War I. And Resnick was very effective in introducing him to Sonnenborg, buying up weapons and arms. Those weapons and arms were stashed in the farmlands of Vineland. All right.
Wow. Vineland, South Jersey.
South Jersey. And when it came time to ship the weapons and arms, the Zionists went to Longy, Zwillman, and to Meyer Lansky in order to enlist the help of the longshoremen, who incidentally, Meyer Lansky played a very effective role in World War II. In a book that's called Operation Underworld, where he negotiated a deal with Thomas Dewey, who at that time had prosecuted Lucky Luciano. Lucky Luciano went to jail, but Lucky Luciano was the boss of the Italians and of the mob. And the Meyer Lansky cooperated, was able to influence Lucky Luciano to become a patriot during World War II, so that the longshoremen of the East Coast, together with the bartenders, the saloon keepers, the cigarette machine, the girls, and so forth, the prostitutes, the pimps, everybody would be eyes and ears to protect against sabotage and espionage. And the same longshoremen were used post-World War II. Lucky Luciano was already in Sicily because he was exiled.
Yeah.
But Frank Costello and Albert Anastasia were friends with Meyer Lansky and with Meyer Lansky and Frank Anastasia. Frank Costello, they were partners in the slot machine business. My role was Mayor LaGuardia eliminated the slot machine business in 1941. I came in 1977 and I brought back the slot machine business in New York, and that's why I wrote this book.
So
All right,
this is a great book.
That's how I became a
We're gonna
gangster.
show us his book. You can get it on Amazon. Great book. He could actually probably write 10 of these books. So
Sure.
we have a couple of other questions.
Go ahead.
All right, we have a couple of personal questions.
Go ahead.
Do you remember Sam Halpert?
Sure.
He admired your connection to Israel Bond.
He was a terrific guy. He was one of the Halpert brothers. You had a picture of Louis Halpert there. Louis Halpert was a prize fighter. He fought Barney Ross and became very, very close with Barney Ross. All right.
All right, we have a helper here. I
Of
think.
course, the Halperts they were great Jews. Very, very devoted. I used to see him all the time, Louis Halpert, at the Treat restaurant in Newark. And then on Friday nights, everybody used to go to Madison Square Garden and watch the fights. As a kid, 14, 15, I used to go to my father's place on 10th Avenue and 43rd Street. And with all of his people, we would go to the fights in Madison Square Garden. We had a good time.
Had a good time.
We had good times.
So there's another question. Do you know Hy Larner from Chicago?
So Hy Lerner, so his name was Red Lerner, Hy Red Lerner.
Okay.
He was from Chicago. He was the slot machine king in Panama.
Mhm.
He ran the gambling in Panama, and he had powerful connections with Mike Harari
Mhm.
and with Noriega. All right.
Wow.
And he was with Al Capone.
Wow. All right, so I have an interesting question here, and you spoke to this a little bit with regards to, police and the gangsters, but this is more about Jewish leaders. How did local Jewish leaders react to Longy and his boys breaking up the Bund meetings? Did they work together, or at least with the tacit approval of the local Jewish leadership?
They didn't ask for their tacit approval, and they didn't care whether they got their approval or not. There was some condemnation, of course, by the elite of the probably at the time of the B'nai German Jewish community that was there from years before, and said, you're making us look terrible, gangsters, and so forth and so forth. By the way, there was a movie called Lucky about Meyer Lansky recently, all right? And in that movie, they had a wife watching her husband get killed by the Jewish mob, right? And I wrote the Rockaways that wrote them, because I know them very well. And I said, what the hell did you do that for? You made us look like Nazis. The The idea, everybody admired the mobsters,
Mhm.
all right? They were the Robin Hoods. Who doesn't love Robin Hoods? Who doesn't love me? All right?
We all love you.
Everybody likes
We love
those
you.
kind of stories, of course. Because, by the way, I can't begin to tell you how many times in my life I sat there and seen my father, R. Abe Green, or DocStatcher, or Jerry Katina, or Abe Green, use to settle a problem with one phone call. Quick story. My aunt owned a big, she was a widow. Uncle Phil died. Aunt Shirley had a place in Bound New Jersey. All right. One time, a couple of guys come and bully her. All right.
Yeah,
She got scared, called my mother. My mother.
Shirley.
And Shirley calls mother, her sister, and tells her, well, a couple of guys came, bullied her and so forth, gangsters.
Yeah, talk to them.
So my mother called me and I went to see Abe,
Oh,
Abe Green. So
okay.
Abe said, tell your Aunt Shirley come tomorrow. Aunt Shirley comes down. Aunt Shirley, what's the problem? She tells the problem. He said, okay, good. He used to pick his teeth with Stimmy did.
Mhm.
He said, never talked. He was like a statue.
Mhm, mhm.
And he said, okay, goodbye, Aunt Shirley. Bye. I said, Aunt Shirley says to me, what's this all about? He said, go home, take care of your business. The next day, she couldn't walk into her shop right. There were so many bouquets of flowers and fruit baskets, all right? And a couple of gangsters show up, take their hats off, and said to her, Mrs. Goldberg, we never knew who you were. Oh, we're awfully sorry. And if you ever need anybody, anything, you call us before you call anybody.
Okay.
I've seen
That is
that
a good
1,000 times. When you need an expedited solution to a problem, you think, you needed to take care of it. Who was the connection guy? Everybody knew, and everybody was connected.
Did you ever fear for your life? Did you have hits on you?
I had two
Yeah.
attempts. I told you.
Clearly they didn't. Well, you told me, but you can tell, we're telling them now,
Yeah,
but you clearly survived.
I was lucky. Providence, God,
Okay.
got interceded in both cases.
Yeah.
More
was-
so the first case.
What was the first case?
The first case was resolved at the Vesuvius restaurant on Bloomfield Avenue at a major sit down over a good bowl of pasta vazol.
Okay.
You never could talk business before eating a bowl of spaghetti. And drink a little glass of wine, have your espresso coffee, and then the
So you
table
knew
gets good.
you knew there was a hit on you?
Yeah. And the second time, the guy, he failed and he left the United States the following week. Okay, next.
Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions here.
Go ahead, ask
Do you remember the Novelty Bar and Grill?
It was downtown.
That's a yes and no.
I think that Novelty was owned by Patty Endler's father.
Okay, do you know Ben Zuckerman and Sam Klein?
So Sam Klein from Cleveland? So,
I don't know.
okay, so Sam, I believe they're
see.
talking about Sam Klein that was from Cleveland, Ohio. If not, there was a Sam Klein was the accountant, but he was a very well-known accountant. Ben Zuckerman, I don't remember that name.
Okay, so Eleanor Rubin asked, did the mob have anything to do with the garment industry and the union?
Of course, that was Lefty Buchholzer in New York. And then eventually it was taken over by Carlo Gambino.
Got it. Okay, so Sam Klein was at Hebrew Youth Academy.
That's right. Sam Klein was the original involved with the Hebrew Youth Academy. That's where the kids went to school, right? Okay.
So can you talk a little more about your family? How is it that I know you have a son who's a rabbi.
Right.
With 8 mezuzah kissing.
Yeah, that's right. I screwed up. He could have been a gangster, but he can't become a rabbi.
How does that happen?
How does it happen?
Yeah.
God has a terrific sense of humor.
So you sent him to, but you sent.
I sent him to the Hebrew Youth Academy and he
Right.
took to it. He liked it.
Yeah.
Right. And today he teaches, he's a very famous teacher of Talmud. He teaches
Where
Gemara.
does he live?
Boca Raton. He's part of the Orthodox community.
And Danny Boy, your younger son?
Danny Boy is living in Naples and he went
Naples, Florida.
Naples, Florida. He went into medicine. He's a interventional X-ray technician.
Not too
Right.
stupid. That's great.
I
So-
sent him, he used to work with the Cubans. I had him with the Cubans for a couple of years running slot
Yeah.
machines. Then I sent him to Brazil to run slot machines in Brazil. And then one day he says, no, that's it.
Don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it. Okay.
So what do you want your legacy to be?
Jew, I'm a proud Jew. Right?
Did you ever want to make Aliyah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The regrets of not making it? Yeah. But I had quite an exciting life. I traveled to 70 countries, learned everybody's world, knew all kinds of crime bosses, knew kinds of everything. It was a fascinating life.
They could make a movie out of your life, and they should. And would you have a favorite gangster movie?
Would I have a favorite? The best movie was Godfather 1.
Godfather 1.
That was a perfect description of this man. Marlon Brando played a perfect representation of Mr. Katina. Next question.
I think that was it.
No, you got a lot of questions.
Oh, did the mob kill JFK?
So I'm going to tell you the story on that. Okay. So real fast. Okay. So I used to eat. Oh, this is a great story. In the 1987 federal case in Washington, D.C., probation report, that crazy prosecutor that had she had
The woman
she
that
had her
was-
eyes on me. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. She was hitting on me. She puts in the probation report that Myron Sugerman is a close, intimate friend of Vincent Jimmy Blue Eyes Allo.
Okay.
All right. Jimmy Blue Eyes Allo is high-ranking Genovese crime family.
Okay.
All right.
Here, look at the people.
So my kid cousin says to me, Keith Biebelberg, he says, "Cuz, you know, Vinny, Jimmy Blue Eyes. I never met the man in my life." So, but the probation report says you're a close, intimate associate of his. I said, it's all nonsense. I don't know him. All right. Make a long story short. Years later, I'm at Christine Lee's Gaslight in Florida, and I'm with the old timers. And who's in the corner? Somebody. Buddy Hinks' wife said, "That's Jimmy Blue Eyes." Oh, no kidding, Jimmy Blue Eyes. Somebody says, "Come on, I'll introduce you. You knew your father." It's with a young woman, leave him alone. A couple of years later, now I know who Jimmy Blue Eyes is. An old friend of mine, Robbie Mark, always says to me, "Come, we're going to go lunch at the Hilton Hotel in New York. I'm going to introduce you to Jimmy Blue Eyes." So sure enough, we go to the hotel. Robbie has to make a phone call downstairs. Who walks in? Jimmy Blue Eyes. I walk in, "Jimmy," and I start to hug him. He said, "What do you want, queer?"
Oh, I didn't bleep it. Oh my goodness.
That's what Jimmy said. That's
All
what-
right, that's what Jimmy said.
That's
in
what Jimmy said.
19 What year was this?
This is 19. This is after I came out of jail. No. This is before I went to jail. So Jimmy, I grabbed a hold of Jimmy. I said, "Jimmy, we're close associates, close intimate friends." It said in the probation report. He says, "What are you, drunk? What do you want? Drugs?"
Okay, that's okay.
That's the government for you. They wrote in the probation report, I was a
That you were
close
close
intimate,
intimate.
never met the man in my life. All right.
Okay. Well, this is what happens when you're live, folks. You get the real deal. This is our last Jewish gangster.
It was what Jimmy said. All
It is
right.
what Jimmy said.
I
So,
told him, "Jimmy, that's politically incorrect. Don't say
okay,
that."
I won't say that. It was great talking with you. Thank you
That's the end of
so
the
much.
question. That's the end of the question.
We don't have a whole lot of time left. I mean,
Real
we could
fast.
do another.
Jimmy Blue Eyes is the one that told me about Kennedy.
Oh, okay.
So I'll make it real fast if you got a minute. Okay.
1 minute.
So
2
1
minutes.
minute. Okay. So Jimmy Blue Eyes,
2 minutes.
the case to start with Joe Kennedy contacts Frank Sinatra, contacts Peter Lawford to contact Jimmy, to contact Frank Sinatra, to contact Jimmy Blue Eyes, to make a deal with Carlos Marcello from Florida, from New Orleans, Sal Trafficante from Florida, and Sam Mooney, Giancana from Chicago, and to make John Kennedy get elected president of the United States of America. All right. When the Kennedys turned against him, all right, there was a guy by the name of Abe Sussman from Dallas, Texas, who was a friend of my father's, who was a jukebox and gaming distributor in Dallas. I used to stay with him when I went to Dallas, Texas, to buy up machines to ship to Italy. It turns out that Abe Sussman was very close to Jacob Rubenstein. By the way, Jacob Rubenstein, Jack Ruby, was a close intimate associate of of the guy you mentioned before, Highliner, and with
Mhm.
Barney Ross, the famous prize fighter. He fought the American Nazi Party in Chicago, Illinois.
Wow.
Jack Ruby was a patriotic Jew. Next.
Awesome.
Okay.
I don't think, do we have any more time? I don't think we really have much more time. We have 3 minutes. Hold on, let me ask. Hold on. Hold on. So we have something from Merle Goldberg. My grandfather supplied the lead pipes to the Minutemen to use against the Nazis and break up the meetings. He was arrested with others, but thankfully charges were dropped.
Of course they were
Imagine
dropped.
that happened to
They
us.
go long. There was a fellow by the name of David Quincy Lieberman. He was the connection guy at City Hall for Longy. So nobody went to jail. All charges were dropped. It was everything was the fix was in on that. We had the City Hall. The Jews ruled.
I got it.
All right.
So how much money did you earn in the mob and were you allowed to keep it after you got out of jail?
How much
That's
money
from
did I earn?
Fran,
Huh?
from Howard Schenkel, Fran's husband. Fran Hoberman's husband, Howard Schenkel, asked that question.
What's
Did you make a lot of money and did you get to keep it?
That's a very interesting question. Next question. What's the next one? Get on. Don't let them call me privately. I'll tell them.
From Carol Krupnick, do you know Jack Turner from Glickstein and Turner, who sold glass bottles to the bootleggers from Brooklyn?
Next question.
Okay, you don't know that. Is there any more? We got gangster movies. I don't know. I think we're done. Do you have some questions for me?
Do I have any questions for you?
What do I need? What do you think I should do with this experience?
With this experience,
What should I tell people? What's the message here?
the message is very simple. There can be no Jews for the future without Judaism. This is coming from a gangster. All right.
Tell the people.
Okay. I am a big follower.
Look at the.
I'm a big follower of two heroes. One was the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And why? Because single-handed, he took the Jews from the ashes of the Holocaust and he gave us back our nobility, our integrity, and purpose. All right. Second hero was Vladimir Zev Jabotinsky, the founding father of the revisionist Zionist movement. My father was a proud Jew. That generation, they were proud Jews, but they didn't have education, knowledge. All right.
Mhm.
In order for us to go into the next generation, the kids have to know the Jewish religion.
Yeah.
All right. There's no getting away from it. Just saying I eat lox and bagel and so forth, not enough.
We have to stay connected.
We have to, and only through knowledge. And ultimately, if you don't believe in God, it's
Well,
Judaism doesn't exist without God.
Myron.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh,
And it's been a great learning experience for me, and I hope you all enjoyed it. We could talk all day, all night. It's time to say goodbye, unfortunately.
all right.
Shalom.
So
But you all can email any additional questions directly to Myron. And his email is in the chat. It's charming@eclipse.net. So I'm going to turn it over now to Renee Golish, who is one of my committee
bye, everybody.
peers.
Okay.
And I wanted to know you stay here with me.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're going to just say goodbye to
Okay.
everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay.
Love you.
Myron, thank you
Terrific.
for joining us and
This kid is
sharing your
good.
vast knowledge of early Jewish life in Newark. I'm Renee Golish, a member of the Ner Tamid Society committee. Thank you for reminding us that Jews were fighting anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and the American Nazi Party long before today, and that we can be proud Jews standing tall. To our many loyal supporters of the greater MetroWest Jewish community, we thank you. Please complete the evaluation survey, which can be found in your inbox. As we say goodnight, we are our best when we hear from you. Thank you and good night.